Awesome. Well, hello again. We're back with another episode of StitchCraft. So we're going to continue working on Pickstream and integrate some more features using MongoDB Stitch. So just to let's switch over to the desktop view and take a look at what we've got. So one thing that I've done well, this is the same old pick stitch. I did figure out the login issue. So whenever you log in, and before it was not loading the pictures, and it is now. I was actually checking. Um, Actually, I can go over to the code and show you here. So what I was doing was I was in this component did mount. I was checking the state. And at that point, the state was not set. And so I'm checking if it's logged in straight from the client, and that's seemed to fix it up. But going back over here, I guess before I go too far into it, I do want to mention that my latest blog post is up on the MongoDB blog. So reacting to auth events using stitch triggers. If you were here with us last week, that's what we went through and did. We've got some information, and then there's a link to the YouTube recording if you happen to miss that. Okay, so back to the application. One thing that I have changed, and we're going to be working on today, is sharing the image via email. And to do that, we're going to be using AWS SES. And so I've gone ahead and created just a simple little share button, and I'll show you how I did that. But it just pulls up a dialog. It allows you to send an email in, and it hits share. But all I've done so far, and let me pull up the console, is just make it kind of console out what you sent it in. So that way we can build the function now. I wanted to get the UI stuff out of the way, just so we didn't have to worry about that. But if I wanted to send it to my email address, I'd hit share. I did not close the window because I was trying to decide if I wanted to close the window or allow you to add more, or do one at a time so you could continue to hit emails. But as you can see down here in the console, we have all the information that we're passing to the share function. And so let's take a look at how I did that. And so if you click off of it, it's going to dismiss it. First, I'm going to go back to, we were using semantic UI, React semantic UI, the components to build out this UI, just because I like the way that it looks and how easy it is for me to kind of build things without having to worry about CSS and styling and things like that, because it just all comes out of the box. And so what I did is I came over here, and under modules, there is a modal. And it's a very handy little tool. I really like it because whenever you put the component on the page, it actually displays the button, but then it handles triggering the thing and doing the back off. And there's or the closing. And there's lots of different, ways that you can do it. If you want it top aligned, if you want a scrolling modal, multiple motor, yeah. And you can always go to the try it, and it's going to show you the code that it's using, which is very handy for putting it in. So let's go over to my code. And what I did is I built this share modal component, and basically it just renders a modal, and I give it a trigger, which is the button. So this is what's going to display whenever the modal is not open. And I can put in some things like how it's animated, so that's what allowed it to do the neat little thing when you hovered over and it said share, and then it went back to the icon, and then I can tell it what to do. This is really nice because it keeps everything in the context of this this component, so we can use the state to manage whether the modal is open and closed. And then you give it the close command, so we're just setting the state back to false for open, and then what to do when it should be open, and so we're just linking that to the state. And then inside that modal, I'm just have a simple form, so I'm asking for the email, and on the submit, we are using a function that's being passed in via props. So up here, I am pulling that off the props. So we got share and we got the entry being passed in. And then from that, we're just passing the entry and then the value of the input. And then the rest of it is pretty much styled input forms, um, a style input tag from Semantic React UI. So we're just asking for an email and we're setting up the on change to set that value to the state. Whenever it changes, we got a placeholder, we have an action, so that's the button that's going to act as a submit. And that's simply, I mean, how we did the share modal. And so how we're adding that to the page is inside the feed. When we're rendering the card group, each card has to have the share modal attached to it. And then we're simply passing in the entry. So we're getting that from the, here it is, the map that we're doing over the entries. And then we are passing through the share function. So the share function is actually being sent into the feed. And so we're passing that from the top level app. And we'll take a look at that real quick. So the top level app is our Stitch app. And I created a new function called share. It's going to be an async function. And basically all I'm doing right now is just console logging. And so we'll work on that here in a minute. But we pass that in whenever we put the feed component on. So we're now passing in both entries and the function, the handler for sharing. Awesome. All right. So let's go over to the documentation. So we're going to use the Amazon AWS service once again. So what's great is we've already set up part of it because we use this for S3. But now we're going to use it for SES. So we can just go over to the Stitch documentation. I always start there. And this is going to be back to the services, our partner services, and the AWS service. So we've done all of this, but if we go further down, we can take a look at what we need to use SES. So here's our S3 service that we used before. And if we continue going down, this is an example of using the SES service in Stitch. Now it is using a Stitch function, so how you put that in is a little different than on using the SDK than here, but we can really use this as a starter to figure out, you know, what we're doing. So like this input is going to be important. We're gonna use that, and then we're gonna be using the send email, and yeah, but we're gonna manipulate this a little bit and change it around so it actually kind of fits this style here. So we have an example of calling the AWS service from the SDKs. We've done that before, but we're going to change it around. Instead of using the S3 service, we're going to use SES. So it's going to be very similar. The args is going to be similar to the input that we see ahead, up above, and then we're going to build the request, and the service will be SES, and the action will be send email, and then we'll pass in the args and continue on. Awesome. So let's go into our Stitch application and make sure that everything is set up right. Normally I have this already logged in, but apparently something I forgot. So bear with me while we have some fun logging in and entering in two-factor auth. Come on. There we go. I'm not a robot. We're going to log in. And where's my phone? All right. If you have an Atlas account or a MongoDB Cloud account, I highly recommend turning on two-factor auth. You can never be too careful these days. I didn't have two-factor auth turned on for my iMessage once, and I woke up one morning to millions of texts in Chinese I apparently sent, which was not a good time. All right. 273. And I'm going to switch to my StitchCraft project and go into my apps. And here's StitchCraft Pickstream. So let's switch over to that. Put my phone back on the charge. That's big. I just got back from MongoDB.local Austin, where I did a talk about Stitch triggers, and I bumped up the size of everything on my computer and forgot to reset it. So we're going to take that back down. Now let's go into services. We already have this AWS service that we're going to use, so that's great, but we need to add a rule. Whenever we were using S3, we basically added a rule for what actions we were able to do. And then we added some more stuff saying, let's only be able to put the object into a specific bucket. So we're going to add a new rule, and I'm just going to call this SES. And we'll add rule. We'll go to SES. We're going to add an action. So the API we're using is SES. And the action that we're going to be using today is send email. So we're going to add the action. We're going to set that as the action. And right now I'm not going to put any rules in, but it'd probably be a good idea to specify from whom you would like this email to be sent. So the from address, or in some cases you want to specify who the email can be sent to. And you can just basically write a match statement that kind of maps to the Amazon SES kind of payload that we're going to be sending in. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it alone. But this is going to allow our SES service to now send, or our AWS service to now send to ses.sendEmail. And that's saved. So that's good. And that's really all we should have to do for setup for Stitch to continue using, to start using SES. So let's go back over to the code and start working on that function. So here is the share function that I created. It's an async function because whenever you execute the request, that's an async request. But let's see, what do we need? Okay, so we have the entry. So we have all the information from the database about the entry we're sending. That's awesome. And then we have the email that we're sending to. So let's start building that request. If we look at our handle file upload function, it's going to be very similar. So we already have we've imported the AWS request, so we can start our builder. We already have where is it at? The this.aws, so our service is already available to us up here in the constructor because we've set that up. So the nice thing about using one AWS service is it's really easy to start adding the other ones. You just got to make sure you set the rules up. So and then also on the AWS side, make sure you set that up. One thing I want to add is I already set up my sending domain in SES. So that takes some time because it involves writing some records to your DNS. Yeah. So I had to go into Namecheap and I had to add some records and I had to wait for them to propagate and then I had to verify that those records existed before I can even start. And then because I'm using the sandbox, because I'm not actually paying for sending emails right now, I had to verify a couple email addresses. So currently I can only send emails to like the 2 emails that I verified. So I verified a personal address and I verified my MongoDB address, just so I have a couple. And then another thing to know is for the from address, you can only send from verified email addresses because you've given that express permission, or anything at your sending domain. So I registered ses.adrian.me. So it's one of the domains that I have. So if I wanted to send from test@ses.adrian.me, that would work. If I wanted to send from admin@mongodb.com, that would not work because I don't have mongodb.com as a verified sending domain. And then also it's not listed as a verified email. So that's kind of the constraints that we're going to be working on with SES, and it's just kind of general with email. All right, so back to the function. We need, and I'm just going to grab this piece, I think, just to show you how easy it is to go from one to the other. So we need to build some args. And we're going to need to build a request, and then we're going to execute it. So it's really going to look a lot like this. All right, and so we'll go down here, And I'm going to get rid of this. We don't need that anymore. I'm going to paste that in. All right. The args are going to be different. And if we go back over to our example, they're going to look, or the example that's in the Stitch docs, it's going to look a lot like this input. So we need to give it a destination. This is the address that you're going to send to. We need to give it a message. So the message has a body and a subject. The body is made up of HTML. You can also put in text, but because we're sending an image, which is going to be an image link, we're going to just use HTML. And then a subject, and then the source, and that's the from email that we're going to use. And so let's kind of create this right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and steal this object. Copying, pasting is fun. All right, so let's replace the args that we have set up that are clearly belong to S3, and let's replace them with args that look more like what SES is going to be using. Cool. All right, so the to address, that is going to be the email that we pass in. So that's easy enough. So let's replace this string with email. All right, now let's go ahead and skip down to the source because this is going to be another easy one. Whenever you have notifications sent from an application, it's usually from one address, and so it's bad form to use no reply. That's kind of, I think that's in the realm of spamminess now. So we're just going to make up an email address, and it has to be from the domain that I set up. So the domain I set up is ses.adrian.me. And so let's, instead of sender, we'll just say it's from Pickstream. So that way it's an email from the application that we're creating. So that's all set up. Next, we'll go to the subject. We're going to kind of go from like least involved to more involved here. So let's go ahead and set the subject, and I'm going to use a template string because that's helpful. And let's come up with a subject. How about we'll just say picture shared by, and then we'll put in, because we have the whole object, I gotta stop trying to point at the screen because you guys can't see me over here. Because we have the whole entry object, we can actually call entry dot, and what was the name of that field? All right, so this is where I'm gonna go back over here and use the one of my favorite new features. So I'm gonna open this in a new window. And I'm going to go back to my cluster, and I'm going to use the Data Explorer to take a look at my collections. We're going to wait for that to pull up. Beautiful spinning animated GIFs. All right, here it comes. All right, so let's look in the Pickstream collection and just grab a document here. And so we'll look at the first one. So we now have an owner underscore name, and that tells me the name of the person who uploaded it. So let's use that. So entry dot owner underscore name. Great. So it should say, and we'll just like that, singular picture shared by Adrian Howard. Awesome. Now we need to come up with the body. We've specified that it's going to be HTML. We've done the character set. But now let's remove this sample code. And again, I'm going to use a template string because it allows me to do things like, multi-line and add in some stuff. So I'm going to do an HTML email here. I'm going to try to be very minimal with it because I just want to get the stuff in there. So we'll give it body tag, and your template could vary. I haven't looked into it, but apparently SES has the ability to do email templates. So this could be as easy as selecting the template and passing in substitution data. That's what I've done before. And we can just say, enjoy this photo. I won't say picture, we're using picture, or pic even. And then we will do an image with a source. We're going to set that equal to the entry.url. And that's good. That should be enough to get us an email. Right. So we've set up our args. We've got a destination. It's the email that's being typed in. We've got a message that's going to be in HTML, and it's going to have an image tag that links to our image. We have a subject, which has got some substitution text in there, and we are going to send it from Pickstream, the name of the app, at the verified domain. Great. So we have our args, and so that's what we need to pass into the send email function. But let's continue setting up our request. So we need to build a request. So we're going to use the AWS request.builder again. And this time, instead of S3, the service we're using is SES. And then we're going to use the action. That's going to be the action that we selected in the Stitch app, and that is send email. With the region, we're going to use the US East 1 region, but this line is actually optional. I believe that's US East 1 is what gets selected if you don't put it in. But if you're one of our friends watching over in Europe, or you're connected to a different region, you can change that out. And I think I mentioned that last time. So that's great. We're going to use the args that we set up here to pass in, and then we're going to build that request. And then the last thing we're going to do is execute that request. So we're going to use our AWS service instance that we created whenever the app was created, and we're going to execute the request. And that's going to return a promise. So I'm just going to go ahead and return this since it's an async function. And I'm going to hit save because that's always a good idea. It's going to reformat things because Prettier knows Prettier better than I do. But let's go over here to the share modal, because one thing that I'm doing in the submit function, I'm not doing anything with the share. So let's go ahead and use then, and we're going to have some kind of result. And let's just console log that out so we can see what's happening. I don't even know what this result's going to look like right now. This is my first time sending an email programmatically with SES. So far, so good. It's been pretty easy. I don't know if that's because we're using Stitch or if the service itself is easy, but we'll find out. Okay, so we're going to console log that result out. And I know that we can actually just push that straight to console.log, but yeah, I've been told many times. And then we're going to do, we're going to catch, and then we're going to do the same thing with the error, just in case there's an error and we need to debug. So we'll console log the error. Cool. All right. So we've added a little bit to that functionality so we can see things happening. Excuse me. Gosh, knock on wood, this should work. So let's find out. I'm kind of nervous about showing everybody my email. It's really a mess. So let's switch back over to our application. I'm going to give it a refresh here just for good measure. I'm going to open up the console and make that maybe a little bit smaller. There we are. Awesome. So now we can actually see the buttons. I'm going to send this picture to myself. It's a great picture that we took. This is the winner of the prize from BitCamp, which is a hackathon that we sponsored in April, I believe. And so, a little FYI. So we're going to share via email, and I am going to send it to, let's send it to my personal address. Nobody spam me. And let's share. And it looks like we have a message ID. So that's very promising. Let me go over and look and see if something came up. Oh, we got a message. Let me pull it out and bring it over so you can see. It's, so good news. We have an email that we generated from our Stitch app, but it did not pull in the picture. So let's go and see. Can we see view original? So if you're not familiar with playing with emails and everything, it's always good whenever you're debugging to show the original email. Of course, that's going to pull that out in a different window too. Let's throw that in there. All right, so this is going to have all the headers of the email, everything. So that looks like that should have worked, but it didn't. So it might be time to go to the API for SES. So let's do this. We're going to do a search for AWS SES. Simple email service. Actually, let's say sending HTML email. Sending formatted email using SES API. That sounds like a winner. Okay. Let's see. It's in the formatted. Yeah, right, the API. Send email action. Yes. Reference. Well, here's an example using Java. .NET. Those are not helpful for people using JavaScript. Let's see what the reference looks like. Oh, great. Okay, so send email. And we'd really like to see like an example of the payload. Okay, so that's in the message. So we're going to look at the message object. And we're in the body. Okay, so that's going to be a body object. And then HTML, the contents of the message in HTML format. Uses for email clients that can process HTML. You can include clickable links, formatted text, and much more. Okay, great. So that is of type content. So we're going to go into content. Yeah, represents textual data plus an optional character set specification. Oh, it's optional. Well, we're sending it anyway. The textual data of the content. Well, that's fun. We go back here. All right, so maybe if we look at the example using Java, we can kind of see what they're doing. So let's see. So there's the from, there's the to, there's the HTML body. Okay, so it looks like I didn't need to include the HTML tags or the body tags. It looks like that's going to take care of that for me. So let's try going back to our code, and let's just remove those. So we don't need that, and we don't need that. And I deleted too much. Carried away. All right. So let's save that. Actually, I can remove some of this indentation. Save it again. Go back over to the pick stream. So we're going to let me close that and close that original message. So I'm going to refresh, even though it probably did that. And we're going to try again. All right, so let's pick this picture again. And I'm going to put in my email address, gmail.com. And I'm going to hit share. And we got another message ID. So I'm going to assume that means that it's sent, which is great. And go back over and, all right, well, this is, like, pop this out. I just want this one. It's got the same subject line, so it's nesting them. Okay, but come on over. All right, so we take a look and we've got the same thing. So let's go ahead and view the original again. And again, it's over there. So we'll pull that up. We'll go down, we'll look at the body. And again, we're sending over the right information because if we go to this URL, this is the picture. But it's not loading it in the image tag. And you know what? I just figured it out. How about an IMG tag? It really helps if you use the right HTML tags whenever you're building these things. So let's go back to the code one more time, and we'll actually fix this tag. So to put an image in an HTML document, you use an IMG tag. So this is not going to be pretty. It's not going to be formatted, but we can take care of that later. There's plenty of templates online we can steal and mix up. But all right, so one more time, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go back over here to Pickstream. You can see it's reloading right now. I'm going to trust it this time, and I'm going to send it. Actually, I'm going to, hold on a minute. Let me delete this thread since it's garbage, and then I'm ready. Okay, so one more time. We'll share it. I'm going to send it to my email at gmail.com, and we're going to hit share. We got another message ID. That's great. It just came in. Huh. Oh. All right, so let me pop this out. And eureka. Look at this. It's really big because it's coming in the full size of the image. Bigger than we wanted, but success. So we've got our header message. We're saying, enjoy this pic. We've included the pic. And then it's really up to formatting the email. So that's like a whole different animal of formatting email. So if you remember how HTML was like back in the late 90s, email pretty much hasn't changed. If you're sending to Gmail, I think it's a little bit better because they can use divs and things like that. If you want to learn how to, build emails, I would definitely follow the Avi Goldman on Twitter, and then check out his. I'm going to give him this shout out. So we're going to look up Himmel. Himmel is a project that he created that allows you to build emails in a kind of a more sane way if you want. So you can actually build out regular HTML, and he's built out these wonderful components that you can use, and Himmel will take care of translating that into a format that your email, the different email clients need. So that way it more closely looks the same whether you're looking at on Outlook or in Gmail or in any of the other email clients that you have. So Himmel.io, check it out if you want to continue playing with email. But that wasn't actually that bad. So we are now able to send an email from our application using Stitch and Amazon AWS SES service, and it really didn't take that long to add on. So some things that we could add is I could actually make this set the state to close, and after you hit share, it actually closes this window. I'm already setting the state. If we go back to the code in the share modal, we have on submit. So we are running this function here, and then like in this then I could set the state and say close. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'll do this dot set state, and I'm going to say open false. And so that way, after it executes the share function, it will just go ahead and close the state, which is great. And maybe even this should be up there as well. That could be, yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead and add this. So whenever it's come back, we can say, let's grab this from down here. We're going to go ahead and clear the input. So that way, whenever you open it back up, it doesn't have the last thing that you input in. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out since we're just doing that all in the then. So we're setting the state, we're logging our result. I'm going to hit save and let Prettier do its thing. And now let's go ahead and try it again. So let's pick a different one, different picture. This one's like a smaller picture here. So we'll do this. I'm going to go ahead and use that. I'm going to hit share. And as you can see, it closed the dialog because we're done with it now. And it gave us a message ID, which is all it gave us. So I'm guessing that means something somewhere. And then let me go back to my email. And it worked. Maybe. I think everything's just like so big that, okay, cool. So let me pop that out again, bring it over here. All right, so here's the first picture. Let's see, can I collapse that? Awesome. And then here's our second picture. So it's using the full width of the image. And so using the image tag, you can go in and you could probably set a max width. Use some fun email CSS to get that set up. And then it won't be as terrible. And there's probably some other things we could do. Using other services, we could probably resize the picture so we're not filling it up with huge images, different things like that. So that's cool. Yeah. So we didn't write anything to the database. We could, go a little bit further and, add information about who this has been shared with, and display that at a different time. But really, this time, for this episode, I really wanted to make sure that we could send the email. So yeah, I don't have anything else for today, but that was sending email with Stitch and AWS SES. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next Thursday. There will be a blog post on Tuesday.